The photograph slipped from the stack of papers, floating to the floor like a leaf caught in an autumn breeze. I might have missed it entirely if not for the way the afternoon sun caught its glossy surface. As I bent to retrieve it, my breath caught in my throat. There, frozen in time, was the moment that would change everything. My name is Melanie, and until that day, I'd been living in my brother Collins's shadow, believing his charm and business acumen would preserve our family's legacy. How wrong I'd been. After Bailey left, I stood at my office window, watching the city bustle below. The same city where my parents had built their reputation on honesty and hard work, only for their son to destroy it all. My phone buzzed again, Collins this time. "Dinner tonight? Have exciting news about the expansion?" I typed back a quick, "looking forward to it," even as anger burned in my chest. The photograph in my drawer was proof that his deception went back further than anyone knew, back to a summer day when we were teenagers, and he'd made his first deal with the devil. Serenity had unknowingly given me the key to everything when she dropped off those old family photos last week. "For remembrance," she'd said. She had no idea what she'd actually given me, proof that would bring Colin's carefully constructed world crashing down. I picked up my phone and dialed Cora's number. "Meet me at our usual spot in an hour," I said when she answered, "and bring everything you found. It's time to make things right." The game was about to change, and for once, I would be the one making the rules. "Look at this," Cora said, spreading documents across our usual corner table at the Hidden Bean Cafe. Her legal pad was covered in neat rows of numbers and arrows connecting different entries. Every major transaction in the past 5 years has a shadow account attached to it. I sipped my Americano, trying to keep my hands steady. Shadow accounts? Shell companies? Fake investments? Circular transactions? She pointed to several highlighted sections. "Collins has been siphoning money since before your parents passed. The Maxwell deal was just the tip of the iceberg." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "How much?" "At least 30 million. Cora's voice dropped to a whisper. "Maybe more." A couple at the next table glanced our way, and I forced a smile, waiting for them to return to their conversation before continuing. "I need to show you something." I pulled out the photograph, sliding it across the table. "Serenity dropped this off last week with some old family photos." Cora's eyes widened as she studied the image. "Is that—" Collins, age 16, accepting an envelope from Marcus Davidson behind the boathouse at our lake house. I tapped the glossy surface. The same Marcus Davidson who went to prison 2 years later for running an investment scam that bankrupted half the county's retirees. "Jesus," Cora breathed. "This proves he was involved in Davidson's scheme?" "It proves he's been lying about knowing Davidson. He testified at the trial that they'd never met." I leaned back, crossing my arms. The statute of limitations might have expired, but the reputational damage... My phone buzzed. Another text from Collins. "Where are you? Thought we had dinner plans." Shit. I'd completely forgotten. "I need to go. Collins is waiting." Cora gathered the documents, her expression serious. "Be careful, Mel. If he suspects anything, he won't." I stood, gathering my coat. "But I need you to do something for me. That journalist you mentioned, Anna something. Anna Wilkins. She's hungry for a breakthrough story. Set up a meeting, but make it look coincidental." 30 minutes later, I walked into La Maison, where Collins was already holding court at our usual table, champagne flowing freely. "There's my favorite sister!" He stood to kiss my cheek, reeking of expensive cologne. "You're just in time. We're celebrating." I noticed Bailey among the guests, his forced smile matching my own. "What are we celebrating?" "The Singapore merger." Collins raised his glass. "It's finally happening. Another Sutton Enterprises success story." My stomach churned. According to the documents Cora had shown me, the Singapore deal was as fake as everything else. "Amazing news," I managed, accepting a glass of champagne. "How did you overcome the regulatory issues?" A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed Colin's face before his smile returned. "All about knowing the right people, sis. Speaking of which..." He guided me toward a distinguished-looking man. Have you met Derek Francis? He's considering joining our next venture. Derek's handshake was firm, his gaze sharp. Melanie, your brother speaks highly of you. You can trust me with this, Mel, he'd said just 3 months earlier, standing in our parents' study after their funeral. The room still smelled of Mom's favorite lavender candles, and Dad's reading glasses lay untouched on his desk. The investment opportunity is solid. We can triple the inheritance in 2 years. Does he? I smiled, noting how Collins shifted uncomfortably. Funny, he rarely mentions you. The evening dragged on, a parade of fake smiles and hollow congratulations. I watched Collins work the room, wondering how I'd never noticed the predatory edge to his charm before. My phone vibrated with a text from Bailey. Back office now. I excused myself and slipped through the restaurant's service corridor. Bailey was waiting, his face ashen. The Singapore documents, he whispered, shoving a USB drive into my hand. They're forgeries, all of them, and there's more. I found emails about the Davidson case. My heart raced. What about Davidson? Collins paid him off, $500,000 to keep quiet about their connection during the trial. Bailey ran a hand through his hair. I can't be part of this anymore, Melanie, but I'll help you make it right. Keep playing along, I said, pocketing the drive. We need to... The door opened and Collins stood there, his expression unreadable. There you are. Having a nice chat? Just catching up, I said smoothly. Bailey was telling me about his daughter's college plans. Collins's eyes narrowed. Interesting, considering Bailey doesn't have a daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Bailey mumbled an excuse and fled, leaving me alone with my brother. You know, Collins said quietly, I've always admired how smart you are, Mel, but you're not as subtle as you think. He stepped closer. Whatever you're planning, remember, I've been playing this game a lot longer than you have. I met his gaze, thinking of the photograph in my purse. Game? I thought this was family, Collins. His laugh was cold. Oh, sister, it's always been a game. He turned to leave, then paused. And I always win. But as I watched him return to his adoring crowd, I touched the USB drive in my pocket and smiled. Not this time, brother. Not this time. Anna Wilkins didn't look like someone who could bring down an empire. Perched on the edge of her cafe chair, laptop balanced precariously on her knees, she seemed more like an eager intern than a seasoned journalist. So, she said, fingers hovering over her keyboard, tell me why I should risk my career on this story. I slid the USB drive across the table. Because everything you need is right here. Bank statements, forged documents, witness testimonies. I paused, watching her expression. And proof that one of the city's most respected businessmen committed perjury. Her fingers stopped moving. The Davidson case? Among others. I pulled out my phone, showing her the photograph. This was taken the summer before Davidson's arrest. Anna studied the image, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Holy shit. There's more. I gestured to the drive. The Singapore merger he announced last week? Complete fabrication. The money's already been moved through shell companies in 3 different countries. Why are you doing this? She looked up, eyes sharp. He's your brother. Because, I started, but was interrupted by my phone buzzing. A text from Derek Francis. Need to meet. Urgent. About Collins. I have to take this, I told Anna. Review the files. If you're interested, meet me tomorrow. Same time. Derek was waiting in his office downtown, his usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. Your brother tried to blackmail me this morning. What? He poured himself a drink, hands shaking slightly. Said he had evidence of tax evasion, wanted me to invest in his Singapore venture or he'd send it to the IRS. Did he show you the evidence? Didn't have to. Derek knocked back his scotch. The evidence exists, but here's what your brother doesn't know. I've already made a deal with the IRS. Full disclosure, reduced penalties. I leaned forward. Why are you telling me this? Because I want in. His eyes gleamed. Whatever you're planning, I want to help take him down. My phone buzzed again. Cora this time. Emergency. Come to the office now. I found her pacing her law office, clutching a stack of papers. Collins just filed for complete control of Sutton Enterprises. He's claiming you're mentally unfit to manage your shares. He what? The room spun slightly. He has statements from 2 psychiatrists claiming you've shown signs of paranoid behavior. She thrust the papers at me. He's moving fast, Mel. We need to move faster. The journalist has the files, I said, sinking into a chair, and Derek Francis wants to help. I remember smoothing my black dress, fighting back tears as I watched him shuffle through the paperwork. I don't know, Collins. Mom and Dad always said to keep the assets separate. Times change, little sister. He flashed that winning smile that had convinced countless investors before me. We need to adapt. Together, we can build something they'd be proud of. It's not enough. Cora stopped pacing. We need... The door burst open and Bailey rushed in, out of breath. He knows. Collins knows about the USB drive. How? IT detected the file transfer. Bailey loosened his tie. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I pulled out my phone, dialing Anna's number. She answered on the first ring. Run it, I said without preamble. Run the story tonight. I haven't verified all the sources. You have the Singapore documents and the Davidson photo. Start with those. The rest will follow. There was a pause. Okay, give me 3 hours. I ended the call and turned to Cora. File an immediate injunction against his mental fitness claim, and get me everything you can on those psychiatrists. Already on it, she was typing furiously. One of them lost his license in Florida 2 years ago. My phone lit up with a text from Serenity. Collins just called, asked about old photos. What's going on? He's searching for the photograph, I realized. He doesn't know we already have it. Bailey's phone chimed. The board meeting's been moved up, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Perfect timing, I said, a plan forming. Anna's story will break tonight. By morning, the board will have plenty to discuss. What about Collins's mental fitness claim? Cora asked. I smiled grimly. Let him try to prove I'm paranoid when everything I've claimed turns out to be true. My phone buzzed one more time. Collins. Family dinner at my place tonight. Non-negotiable. He's trying to control the narrative, Bailey said, reading over my shoulder. No, I replied, grabbing my coat. He's scared. Mel, Cora called as I reached the door. Be careful. A cornered animal is the most dangerous. I nodded, thinking of the brother who'd once protected me from playground bullies, who'd held my hand at our parents' funeral, who'd looked me in the eye while stealing everything we'd inherited. Send me those psychiatrist records, I said. And, Bailey, make sure the board gets copies of Anna's story the moment it breaks. As I headed to Collins's penthouse, my phone buzzed with an email from Anna. Story goes live in 2 hours. Sure you want to do this? I thought of our parents, of their legacy, of all the people Collins had deceived and destroyed. Do it, I typed back. Then I stepped into the elevator, ready to face my brother one last time before his world came crashing down. Collins' penthouse smelled of expensive cigars and desperation. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city lights, swirling amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. You're late, he said without turning around. Traffic. I set my purse down, keeping the photograph close. 90 minutes until Anna's story broke. Funny thing about traffic, Collins turned, his smile razor-sharp. It gives you time to think. I've been thinking about family loyalty, Mel, about trust. Have you? I moved to the bar, pouring myself a drink. My hand didn't shake. Any particular reason? Derek Francis called me today. Interesting chat. He stepped closer. Apparently, my little sister's been quite busy. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. How's the Singapore merger going? His expression flickered. Don't play games, Mel. Where's the USB drive? What USB drive? Collins slammed his glass down, liquid sloshing over the rim. Enough! Do you have any idea what you're doing? What you could destroy? I know exactly what I'm doing. I checked my watch. And in about 80 minutes, so will everyone else. The color drained from his face. What have you done? My phone buzzed again. Cora. Injunction filed. Psychiatrist's credentials being questioned. You know, I said, setting my glass down carefully. I kept asking myself when it started. The lies, the schemes, the fraud. I thought maybe it was after Mom and Dad died. But then I found the photograph. Photograph? His voice was dangerously quiet. I pulled it from my purse. You and Davidson, behind the boathouse. 16 years old and already learning how to ruin lives. He lunged for it, but I stepped back. Copies are already in safe hands. You self-righteous little... He caught himself, forcing a laugh. What do you want? Money? A bigger role in the company? I want what's right. Right? He spat the word. You want to talk about right? Who paid for your college? Who got you your first job? Who protected you after that mess with... Protected me? I cut him off. You manipulated me, used me, stole from me. I signed the papers that day, ignoring the knot in my stomach. Our cousin Serenity had warned me over coffee the previous week, her words now haunting me. Collins has changed since college. Be careful, Mel. But I dismissed her concerns. After all, this was my brother, the golden child who'd graduated top of his class, who'd given the touching eulogy at our parents' funeral while I'd been too distraught to speak. His phone rang. He checked it, face darkening. Bailey, you treacherous bastard, he muttered. My own phone lit up with a text from Anna. Story's ready, last chance to back out. Collins saw the message. Who's Anna? A journalist who's about to expose everything. The Davidson connection, the Singapore fraud, the missing millions. He moved with surprising speed, grabbing my arm. You're going to call her right now and stop this. Or what? I met his gaze. You'll have more doctors declare me unstable? His grip tightened. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. I pulled free. Check your email. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through messages. I watched his face change as he read the injunction details, the exposed credentials of his paid psychiatrists, the mounting evidence against him. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice wavered. The board meeting tomorrow might disagree. I walked to the window, looking out at the city our parents had loved. Did you ever think about them, Collins, when you were destroying everything they built? I built it bigger, he shouted. I took their modest success and turned it into an empire. Built on lies, built on reality. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking older. The world doesn't run on honesty, Mel. It never has. My phone buzzed again. Anna. Stories live. Collins's phone immediately started ringing. He stared at it, then at me. Fix this, he whispered. Please. For family. Family? I laughed bitterly. You lost the right to play that card when you tried to declare me mentally unfit. His phone kept ringing. Email notifications pinged repeatedly. The empire was starting to crumble. I can make this right, he said desperately. We can figure something out. It's too late. I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. The board meets in 12 hours. I suggest you prepare your resignation. Melanie, his voice cracked. Don't do this. Don't destroy everything. You already did that, Collins. I opened the door. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. As I walked to the elevator, I heard something crash against the wall in his apartment. My phone was flooded with messages. Cora, Bailey, Derek, even Serenity. But it was Anna's text that made me smile. Stories trending. Your brother's name is everywhere. What's our next move? I stepped into the elevator, watching the numbers count down. Keep digging, I typed back. This is just the beginning. Behind me, I could hear Collins' muffled shouts as more phones started ringing in his apartment. By morning, those shouts would be drowned out by the sound of his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. And I would be there to watch it fall. The boardroom crackled with tension as Collins stormed in, 30 minutes late to his own emergency meeting. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His usually immaculate suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. This is a witch hunt, he announced, slamming a newspaper onto the table. His face glared up from the front page, alongside headlines about fraud and deception. A witch hunt implies false accusations, Derek said coolly from his seat. These seem quite substantiated. You, Collins pointed a shaking finger. You're behind this. Actually, I stood up, smoothing my blazer. That would be me. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Most had known me since childhood, had watched me grow up alongside Collins. Now they were witnessing our family imploding in real time. The evidence is clear, Bailey said, distributing folders. Bank statements, forged documents, witness testimonies. All lies, Collins's voice cracked. My sister is unwell, as I've documented. About those documents, Cora interrupted, entering with perfect timing. Both psychiatrists have recanted their statements. One's admitted to being paid for his diagnosis. She dropped more papers onto the table. The medical board is investigating. Collins' face went from red to white. This is absurd. I built this company. Our parents built this company, I corrected. You just exploited it. Miss Sutton? My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, jolting me back to the present. Mr. McGregor is here to see you. Bailey McGregor, Collins' business partner, strode into my office moments later, his usual confidence notably absent. Melanie, we need to talk about the Q3 reports. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, still clutching the photograph. What's wrong? My phone buzzed. Anna. Second story ready. Interviews with Davidson's victims. Say the word. The Singapore merger was going to revolutionize, Collins started. There is no Singapore merger, Bailey cut in. Never was. The money's been traced to offshore accounts in your name. The board chairman cleared his throat. Collins, these allegations are false! He slammed his fist down. Everything I did was for this company. Like paying off Marcus Davidson? I pulled out the photograph. Or stealing from our parents before they died? Serenity gasped from her seat. She'd insisted on attending, despite Collins's attempts to exclude her. The boathouse photo. I always wondered why you were so desperate to find it. You don't understand, Collins pleaded, looking around the room. The business world isn't black and white. Sometimes you have to commit perjury, Derek suggested. Forge documents, Bailey added. Steal from your own sister, I finished. Collins lunged for the photograph, but Derek caught his arm. Careful, Derek warned. Assault charges won't help your case. My phone buzzed again. Anna. Running second story now. On cue, phones around the table started pinging with notifications. I watched as board members read the new headlines, their expressions hardening. I move for an immediate vote, the chairman announced, on the removal of Collins as CEO and the freezing of all company assets pending investigation. You can't do this, Collins shouted. I am this company. All in favor? The chairman raised his hand. One by one, others followed. This isn't over, Collins hissed as security appeared at the door. You have no idea what you're doing, Mel. I know exactly what I'm doing. I met his gaze. I'm protecting our parents' legacy. As they let him out, Cora handed me another document. The police want to question him about Davidson. Apparently, your story opened some old wounds. Ms. Sutton, the chairman turned to me. Given the circumstances, the board would like to appoint you as interim CEO. I thought of our parents, of their dedication to building something honest and true. I accept. My phone lit up with messages. Anna. Stories viral. Interview requests pouring in. Bailey. Singapore authorities want to talk. Derek. Justice Department called. They're interested in the offshore accounts. What now? Serenity asked quietly. I looked around the room, at the faces showing various degrees of shock, betrayal, and determination. Now we rebuild, the right way. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements, signatures, and decisions. By evening, I stood in what had been Collins' office, my office now, staring out at the same city view he'd looked at just yesterday. You okay? Cora asked from the doorway. He's been arrested, I said, showing her the text from the detective. They found more evidence in his home. Decades of fraud. You did the right thing. Did I? I turned to face her. He's still my brother. He stopped being your brother the moment he chose greed over family. She squeezed my shoulder. Your parents would be proud. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. Collins, using his one phone call. You'll regret this. Family should protect family. I thought of the photograph, of 16-year-old Collins making his first corrupt deal, of all the lives he'd ruined since then, including mine. No, I typed back. Family should hold family accountable. Then I blocked his number, sat down at my new desk, and began the work of rebuilding everything he'd destroyed. He's refusing the plea deal, Cora announced, striding into my office 3 weeks later. Wants his day in court. I looked up from the stack of financial records I'd been reviewing. Of course he does. Collins never could resist an audience. There's more. She dropped a thick folder on my desk. His lawyer's planning to paint you as the mastermind. Claims Collins was trying to protect you from yourself. Bold strategy. I flipped through the papers. Considering we have his signature on everything, my phone rang. Anna again. She'd become a constant presence since breaking the story. You need to see this, she said when I answered. Turn on channel 7. The numbers don't add up. He ran a hand through his graying hair. I've been going through the transactions, and there are discrepancies, significant ones. My heart raced as I glanced down at the photograph again. How significant? Millions. Bailey leaned forward, lowering his voice. And it's not just recent. This pattern goes back years, predating your parents' death, I finished for him, my voice hollow. I grabbed the remote and Colin's face filled the screen. He stood on the courthouse steps, perfectly groomed despite 3 weeks in custody, playing to the cameras like he was born for it. My sister's actions are a tragic result of long-standing mental health issues, he was saying. I only ever tried to protect her and our family's legacy. That manipulative bastard, Cora muttered. These accusations are a cry for help, Collins continued, his voice breaking perfectly on cue. I love my sister. I only pray she gets the help she needs. The door burst open and Bailey rushed in. We found the missing money, all of it. I muted Collins' performance. Where? Scattered across 23 accounts in 12 countries. Bailey spread a new set of documents across my desk. But here's the interesting part. There's a pattern. Every major withdrawal coincides with a payment to someone named Robert Maxwell. Maxwell? Cora's head snapped up. As in the Maxwell deal? The supposedly fake deal, I said slowly. Unless... My phone buzzed. Derek, found something. Meet me at the usual place. Urgent. 30 minutes later, I sat across from Derek in our regular cafe, watching him pull up files on his laptop. Robert Maxwell is real, he said, without preamble. And you'll never guess who he is. He turned the screen toward me. I stared at the photograph, feeling the ground shift beneath me. Dad's old business partner? Derek nodded. The one who supposedly died in that boating accident 12 years ago? But why would Collins... Because Maxwell didn't die, Derek cut in. He faked his death to avoid fraud charges, and your brother's been paying him ever since. My phone lit up with a text from Serenity. Found more photos. You need to see these now. The Maxwell deal wasn't fake, I realized. It was blackmail. Go, Derek said, seeing my expression. I'll keep digging. I found Serenity in her apartment, surrounded by old photo albums. Look, she said, pointing to a series of pictures. These were taken the summer before Maxwell's accident. Look who's in the background. There was Collins, barely visible behind a tree, passing something to Maxwell. In the next photo, our father stood nearby, his face twisted in anger. Dad knew, I whispered. There's more. Serenity pulled out her phone, showing me an email. I found this in my mom's old account. She kept everything. The email was from our father, dated 1 week before his death. Collins must be stopped. The evidence is in the lake house safe. Password, forgiveness. My hands shook as I read it. The lake house. We haven't been there since they died, Serenity finished. Convenient timing, wasn't it? My phone rang. Bailey again. The Maxwell payment stopped 2 days after your parents' accident. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. I dialed Cora's number. Get me everything you can find about my parents' accident. I said when she answered. And I mean everything. Mel, she said carefully, what are you thinking? I'm thinking my brother's even more dangerous than we realized. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Collins was giving another interview, tears streaming down his face as he described his concern for my mental state. We need to move fast, I told Serenity, before he spins this any further. The lake house? I nodded, already heading for the door. Call Anna. Tell her to hold off on any new stories until we check the safe. Mel, Serenity caught my arm. Be careful. If Collins really did, if he was responsible for... I know, I pulled free. That's why we need proof. My phone buzzed one more time, an email from an anonymous account. You're asking the right questions, but are you ready for the answers? M. Maxwell was alive, my brother was playing victim, and somewhere in a lake house safe lay the truth about our parents' death. Ready or not, I muttered, stepping into the elevator. It's time to finish this. The pieces were falling into place. The rushed paperwork after the funeral, the constant deflection whenever I asked about financial reports, the way Collins had insisted on handling all communication with our parents' old business partners. There's more, Bailey continued. The Maxwell deal? It never existed. The money's gone, Melanie, all of it. The truth about Collins was bad enough. But if he'd had anything to do with our parents' accident, well, destroying his reputation would be the least of his problems. The lake house stood silent in the gathering dusk, a monument to happier times. As I turned my key in the lock, memories flooded back. Summer barbecues, holiday gatherings, the last time I'd seen my parents alive. Security systems still active, Serenity noted, pointing to the blinking red light. Good. I entered the code. Means no one's been here. My phone buzzed. Cora. Got the accident report. Things don't add up. Call me ASAP. The safe's in Dad's study, I said, heading upstairs. The house smelled musty, untouched since that final weekend. The study door creaked open, revealing dust-covered furniture and walls of books. Dad's reading glasses still sat on his desk, exactly where he'd left them. Found it, Serenity called, moving a painting aside. The safe looked ordinary enough, but my hands trembled as I entered the password, forgiveness. The mechanism clicked. Inside lay a thick manila envelope and a USB drive. My phone rang, Bailey this time. Maxwell's been found. He's in Bangkok, and he's willing to talk. Put him on speaker, I said, spreading the envelope's contents across the desk. Serenity leaned in to listen. Hello, Melanie? Maxwell's voice crackled through the line. I've been expecting your call. Tell me about my parents. Straight to the point, he chuckled. Just like your father. He discovered what Collins was doing, you know. The fraud, the embezzlement, all of it. I picked up a document from the desk, a detailed record of Collins's transactions dating back to his teens. When? 3 days before the accident. He confronted Collins, threatened to expose everything. Serenity gasped, pointing to a date on one of the papers. The day before our parents died, Collins had withdrawn $2 million in cash. The brake lines, Maxwell continued, weren't an accident. My hands shook as I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. Video files filled the screen, security footage from the lake house. Your father installed cameras after he caught Collins meeting me years ago, Maxwell explained. The last video. You should watch it. I clicked play. The timestamp showed 2 a.m. the night before the accident. Collins appeared, entering Dad's study, rummaging through papers. Then Dad walked in. The argument was silent, no audio, but their gestures told the story. Dad pointing accusingly, Collins pleading, then growing angry. Finally, Collins stormed out, but not before turning to shout something that made Dad stumble backward. He confessed everything to me later, Maxwell said. Wanted my help covering it up. That's when I realized how far he'd fallen. My phone buzzed again. Anna. Collins just called a press conference for tomorrow morning. He's going to try to get ahead of this, Serenity warned. Not this time. I gathered the documents. Maxwell, we need you to testify. Already on my way back, landing in 3 hours. Suddenly, footsteps creaked downstairs. Serenity and I froze. Hello, sister. Collins's voice drifted up. Finding anything interesting? How did you get out of custody? He laughed. Money talks, and I still have plenty hidden away. His footsteps approached the study. I quickly photographed the key documents, sending them to Cora, Anna, and Bailey. You know, Collins called closer now, I really did try to protect you, even after you betrayed me. But now, his voice hardened. Now you're just like Dad, too righteous for your own good. The study door burst open. Collins stood there looking wild-eyed and dangerous. Did you watch the video? He asked, seeing the laptop screen. Did you see how self-righteous he was? How he threatened to destroy everything I'd built? You killed them, I said quietly. Your own parents. I warned them. He stepped forward, told them to stay out of it. But Dad wouldn't listen. And Mom? She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're insane, Serenity whispered. I'm practical. Collins smiled grimly, like I'm being practical now. He reached into his jacket, but before he could pull out whatever was hidden there, sirens wailed in the distance. Did you really think I'd come alone? I asked. That I wouldn't have backup? His face contorted. You don't understand. I did everything for this family. No, I stepped forward as red and blue lights flooded the room. You did everything for yourself. The room spun slightly as I processed his words. My inheritance, my parents' legacy, everything I'd entrusted to Collins had vanished like smoke. I should have seen it, I whispered, more to myself than Bailey. None of us saw it, he replied, but I barely heard him. My attention was fixed on the photograph in my hands, a seemingly innocent childhood snapshot that captured something far more sinister. Police officers swarmed up the stairs, weapons drawn. Collins looked at me one last time, a mixture of rage and something like respect crossing his face. Well played, little sister, he said as they handcuffed him. Well played. My phone lit up with messages. Cora. Documents received. Filing murder charges now. Anna. Story ready to run. Just say when. Bailey. Maxwell's plane landed early. Police have him in custody. I watched as they led Collins away, his perfectly tailored suit now wrinkled and dirty, his carefully constructed world finally, completely shattered. Now, I typed back to Anna. Run it all. The courtroom fell silent as Collins stood for sentencing. Gone was the polished businessman, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger in prison orange. He didn't look at me, hadn't since Maxwell's damning testimony yesterday. The defendant has been found guilty on all counts, the judge announced, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and perjury. My hand found Serenity's as we waited. I hereby sentence the defendant to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. No dramatic outburst, no last-minute revelations, just the quiet sound of handcuffs and my brother being led away. Ms. Sutton? A familiar voice called as we left the courthouse. Robert Maxwell stood in the shadows, looking older than his photos. Thank you for helping me make this right. Why now? I asked. After all these years? Your father was my friend. He handed me an envelope. This belongs to you. It's everything I have left. Enough to help all the people Collins hurt. My phone buzzed. Anna. Ready for the exclusive when you are. The next morning, I stood before the board, Maxwell's donation in hand. We're establishing the Sutton Restoration Fund, I announced, to repay everyone my brother defrauded, with interest. The company can't afford, one member started. I'm not asking the company, I cut in. This is my personal inheritance, plus donations from those who helped cover up Collins's crimes. It's time we made things right. Bailey raised his hand. I'd like to contribute as well, to atone for my years of silence. Others followed suit. By meeting's end, the fund had tripled. Your parents would be proud, Cora said later, reviewing the paperwork. Not just of the fund, but of you. My phone lit up, a message from Davidson's Victims Support Group. Thank you for bringing the truth to light. When can we meet? Schedule it, I told Cora. It's time to hear their stories. The lake house door creaked as I entered one last time. The study still held echoes of that night, But something had changed. The weight of secrets had lifted. Ready? Serenity asked, carrying a box of old photos. Almost. I opened Dad's safe one final time, removing the last item, a letter I hadn't been ready to read until now. My dearest Melanie, it began in Dad's familiar scrawl. If you're reading this, I failed to stop your brother, but I never lost faith in you. You have the strength to right these wrongs, to rebuild what he destroyed. The truth may hurt, but it also heals. I love you, Dad. My phone chimed. Derek. Singapore authorities dropped all charges. Company's name is clear. The movers are here, Serenity called from downstairs. I took one last look around, then descended to find a group of women waiting outside. Former employees, investors, people Collins had betrayed. We heard about the restoration fund, one said, but we want to help too, to build something new. My phone buzzed again. Anna. Story about the fund is trending. People are coming forward to help. That's what we'll do then, I said, looking at these survivors of my brother's schemes. Build something new, together. The lake house would become a retreat center for financial fraud survivors. The company would prioritize ethics over profits. The restoration fund would grow into a foundation. Ms. Sutton, a young intern appeared. Your 3 o'clock is here. More victims wanting to share their stories. I nodded, gathering my things. The truth had cost me a brother, but given me something greater. Purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Cora, my best friend and lawyer. Need to see you ASAP. Found something in the old contract files. Bailey, I said, my voice stronger now. I need you to keep this quiet for now. Can you get me complete access to all the financial records? He nodded, studying my face. What are you planning? I slipped the photograph into my desk drawer. Justice, but first I need to make a few calls. My phone lit up one last time. A message from an unknown number. Found peace. Finally understand what Dad meant by forgiveness. See. I showed the message to Cora. Think he means it? Does it matter? She asked. You've already won the battle that counts. She was right. Colin's verdict hadn't just been about justice. It was about breaking cycles of deception, about choosing truth over family loyalty when that loyalty enabled harm. Ready for your interview? Anna asked, notebook in hand. I looked around at my new family, not bound by blood, but by shared purpose. Serenity organizing files, Cora reviewing cases, Bailey mentoring young executives, Derek implementing new transparency protocols. Actually, I said, let's make it a group interview. This story belongs to all of us. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows as we gathered to share our truth. Not just about Colin's crimes, but about healing, rebuilding, and the power of standing together against corruption. Some stories end with justice, others end with redemption, but the best ones end with hope. Hope that even the darkest truths can light the way forward. This was one of those stories.